And I said, what would you like? They said, we are desperate. We want to get rid of our drug situation. And it was heartbreaking. They said, we don't know. We know we'll die. We just don't know where to go. And they're completely black in the, and lost in a sense. They were single boys who grew up on the streets, ended up in drugs, hard drugs, didn't know where to go. So we tried a small initiative now, but we realized that the numbers are so large. So the second set of people would be people with both men and women with serious drug issues, where you have to have rehabilitation. But the problem with the rehab, is firstly the numbers, and the second is that they can't come back to the same situation. Because they come back after you clean them up, and they go back to exactly the life that started them off into the same location. So that's why I felt maybe a linkage with these shelters where, once they come out, they go into a new location, into a working men's hostel, and initially you help them, with some union, get even construction work, get some cycle rickshaw, get some kind of livelihood that enables them to start a new life in a more comprehensive sense, with counseling support, etc. So that's the second category. We have old and destitute people who are very sick, and you see actual starvation happening on the streets of Delhi. This winter when we saw people dying in Delhi, I decided, it just hit us very badly. And I wondered how many people actually died. And we went through a 6-month research with some young colleagues of mine. And the findings have been stunning. I mean, we have to really, there's no record, there's no evidence. So we went through police records, we went through crematorium records, we went through Qabristan, we went through all of this. And what we found, records of, so far, and I think this is still the tip of the iceberg, we found that on an average we have evidence of at least 10 people dying every day on Delhi streets, homeless without anyone to take care. There's a lot of homeless people who still have friends, so they are just not reflected in our sample. The numbers are likely to be much larger. Which is in the natural rate of growth, or a natural death rate in the same population would be about 2 people. So already we found that 5 times more people die on the streets because they are homeless than other people, just of physical causes. So we have, and we find when Tarek and other young friends and I, we go out at night, you find classical symptoms of starvation right in universities. Young people, and the other striking thing was that death rate is primarily between the ages of 30 to 45. People at the prime of their working ages who are dying on the streets. So I think we need recovery shelters. We have teams of people, my own younger colleagues, whose job is now to actually pick up these people and take them to public hospitals. And we built a relationship now. They do admit that it's quite complicated. They need an address, they need somebody to sit by the bedside, etc. But we're able to work it out. But what happens when they are discharged? Because you have that kind of illness, so we need recovery shelters. We need places both for mental and physical health, where somebody can go and be taken care of in nursing, which is not a hospital, but it is not, they're not on their own. So I think recovery shelters is a third kind of shelter. We need shelters for women who, as I was explaining, I think women have a far more complex with childcare facilities, but a lot of more mental health support, emotional support, etc., and livelihoods. And there we struck upon a very, very exciting possibility, which I think can happen in every city. Now that the ICDS, we got a Supreme Court order that the ICDS has to supply hot cooked meals made by self-help groups of women. So we're speaking to governments saying that declare every women's shelter as a self-help group of women to supply cooked food for the ICDS, which means that, and culturally almost every woman knows how to cook in India. So the first thing, from the day that they join, if they have a livelihood which is dignified and they have a place which is protected and it's friendly and there's childcare, I hope that it will be a successful place, and we need quite a lot of these places again, which will deal with, like I had described right in the beginning, I think love and security will tend to deal with a substantial part of their mental health problems. A little bit of counseling may be required, but let's not medicalize suffering into mental illness. And let's treat suffering as suffering, try to address the suffering, and probably a lot of the problems will heal. That finally leaves you with this most difficult category of people who have severe mental health problems and are homeless and have nowhere to go. And I must confess that we have much fewer answers, except one that I think we're having a full session about in the afternoon, of protected communities. But briefly, we are saying that for people who have nowhere to go, abandoned in institutions, abandoned on the streets, can we not, I mean, they need the protection of an institution, but the freedom and the dignity and the agency of an open community. So that's why we call it a protected community, which is a community of people who, and it may not just be people with mental illness. You know, you have many destitute people. You have people with leprosy, you have old people who have been abandoned, disabled people who are abandoned, persons with mental health problems abandoned. I'd really love to see one which is a mixed community of this kind, and let them form their own friend groups of 4, 5, 6 people who live in cottages, cook their own food, decide their own routines, and gradually, you will find local communities are quite tolerant of eccentric behavior if they're a little bit educated, and so you have somebody who takes care, ensures that if they need medication, they need protection, they're not abused, but otherwise allows them the freedom to construct their own lives. To my mind, that's a solution that perhaps can work, but I think a lot of detailing is required. Public policy at the national level will obviously have to facilitate all of this, and there are no resources. If NGOs have to, have to find resources, etc., it would be too much. Real estate is the biggest problem. In this, I mean, in a city, just finding the physical spaces and the construction. So, in this winter, when people were dying, I'm Commissioner of the Supreme Court on the right to food, but it was just getting really desperate, and we found that the government had actually reduced the number of shelters this winter, even from the few that they had earlier. So I just took a chance and I wrote a letter to the Supreme Court judge saying that there's evidence that people die in winter when they're homeless, primarily because you need more nutrition to keep your body temperature when you're exposed to extreme body temperature. So I said that I just stretched my mandate saying that I believe that these people are on the streets primarily because they're starving. They're dying on the streets because they're starving. I stand by that, and therefore I would like directions immediately to be given. We fortunately found a compassionate judge who not only, he said, I'm going to hear this case first thing tomorrow morning. And so we all came in the next morning, and the officers of course said that we need time and we need to think about it. And the judge said, my patrons, he called the homeless his patrons, my patrons have no time to wait. You have to have discussions with officers. He told the Solicitor General, have it over lunch, and I'm going to hear it again after lunch. So we again reassembled after lunch, and he directed that shelters have to be created, as many as you can, overnight. It both, I was both exhilarated and deeply despondent because they succeeded in doubling the number of shelters that they've created since independence in 2 nights. Exhilarated because, this pressure work, but despondent because I've been talking to them for 3 to 4 years. Please expand, they didn't do it. They got this one whiplash and they were able to do it. I mean, they had the buildings, they had the resources. Homeless people for that brief period were telling us that it was very strange because policemen were coming and saying, please go to the shelter, please take these new blankets, please, do this, etc. But it really highlighted the fact that we have to have a national policy which creates legal rights for them. I made a very detailed national policy which I submitted then to the Supreme Court saying please pass a national policy. Governments have been very reluctant to do it, claiming that they don't have the resources. we found that JNNRUM, which is a very large program, actually has some 50-60,000 crores, and with most of which they're not even using. And so I was able to demonstrate that actually this entire program is possible just using existing resources, if there is a will to do it. There's still no orders from the Supreme Court. I hope that through the NSC now maybe we'll be able to get. But what the government can at best do is to create a set of responsibilities. Not the best government in the world can provide the compassion and the love that this very difficult segment requires. So I think the government will have to create enabling possibilities in terms of providing the real estate and providing some resources, but the rest of it has to be community action. And the last thing that I'd like to say is that where does the hope come from? In this time when I was describing how you have to hire out these blankets, etc., on a cold winter night. When we'd gone to Jama Masjid one of these nights, I noticed suddenly that mentally ill single women, old, abandoned, all of them had mattresses and quilts, without exception. So I was very curious and I wondered, I said, how did this happen? So the homeless, able-bodied homeless men said that if they didn't have it, we know they would die in one night. So how do they get it? So they said that every night we pool money first between ourselves to ensure that these old and mentally ill and disabled people get their blanket. If we have more money left over, and often they have to give up a meal, a choice between a meal, and then we choose for ourselves. So this we have to do. And it touched me very deeply because I realized that what government should be doing and is not doing, what NGOs should be doing and are not doing, what that entrepreneur who set that up, and shame on him as well, what he should be doing and is not doing. The homeless and the most destitute are doing. And they're doing it, and they said it so matter-of-factly that it was, what other choice is there? And so maybe we need to do our bit, but homeless people are primarily surviving because of their own human capacities, their compassion, their humanity, and their courage. And all we need to do is to partner that, and perhaps we can do it.